Hi, welcome. In this video, we're going to go over the final exam sample questions. So the first question is, write only the function definition. So we do only want to write the function definition for this question. The name of the function is called sum array. It has 3 parameters and a void return type. So let's see what the parameters are. The first parameter is an array of integers. Now, of course, when you're doing this, you should read the entire question through. I'm just didn't want to read it to you, and then so we're going to read it as we go. But if I were taking this test, I would read the entire question first. The count of how many integers are in the array, and an input-output parameter for the total. And if you read through it, you would see that the name of that input-output parameter should be total PTR. All right, so this is the function definition. Inside the function, write a loop that will add up all the integers in the array and store the result in the value at total pointer. Remember to initialize it to 0, declare any variables, assume the array is size 100, and the second parameter variable stores the number of filled cells. All right, so we're going to initialize value at total pointer to 0. We're going to use a for loop, so I'm going to declare I, and we'll start at the beginning of our array, go up to count, go 1 by 1 through each element in the array, and then we're going to take whatever value that total pointer has, which at the first time, of course, it's going to be 0, add it to each element in the array, and assign it back to the value at total pointer. So it'll go through each element in the array and add them up and store the result in the value at total pointer. Question 2. You're going to write the function definition and the main function with the function call. All right, so our function is called fill array. So the name of the function is fill array. It has 2 parameters, an integer, oh, that's horrible, an integer array, and a pointer to an integer, and that's called count pointer. Obviously, read through it. Okay, it has a void return type. How do I know it has a void return type? It doesn't say it, but it doesn't say it's going to return anything. So when you read it, it's going to prompt the users for integers and until the user enters a 0 to stop. So we're going to have, to get integers, we're going to say int input, and then we're going to prompt printf enter. Again, it's an exam, so you can just say enter scanf into the address of the input. And then we're going to use a while loop because it says it will take negative and positive integers. So as long as the input does not equal 0, then we will go inside of the loop. And then, of course, we're going to have to do an update for our loop. So our update is going to be to get the next number. So this is our loop. This is the update for our loop. This is the initialization for our loop. This is the test for our loop. And this is the update for our loop. Always when you have a while loop, you're going to have the update inside of the loop body. So what are we going to do inside the loop? We're going to have to count how many numbers were entered and store that in the value at count pointer. So you could make another variable called count, or you could just initialize the value at count pointer to 0. And then each time you go inside the loop, you add 1 to the value at count pointer. And then we're going to add the integers into the array. So if the user gives an input that is not a 0, then we're going to assign that input at location value. So let's take a look at our array here. This is our array. This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, etc. All right, so right here, when we initialize value at count pointer, this is our first empty cell in our array. So we're going to say, we're going to get our input, say the user enters the number 10, then the number 10 is going to be assigned to our array at index value at count pointer. So if you worked on the assignment 9, this should be very familiar to you. And then we're going to assign our input there. So if they put a 10, for example, the user entered 10. 10 is not a 0, so 10 is going to go here. Then we're going to add 1. We're going to say the value at, and this is inside of the loop. I don't want you to be confused by that. The value at count pointer equals the value at count pointer plus 1. So now after we assign the 10 there, then we're going to add 1 to the value at count pointer. So now the value at count pointer is right here. So now we get our next input. If the user enters a 0, it's going to stop the loop. And if the user enters anything but a 0, say they enter -5, then a -5 is going to go here, and then we're going to move the value at count pointer over to here. So that should work. Let's make sure that we've done everything. We read again. Write your function definition, so we don't have our ending curly brace for our function. It's called fill array. It takes 2 parameters, an integer array and a pointer to an integer. The function will prompt the user to enter integers, negative and positive one by one, and add the integers into the array. So they're going to go into the array right here. Okay, and when they enter 0 to stop. Inside the loop, in the function, count how many numbers were entered and store the result in the value at count pointer. So this is going to be updated with each iteration of the loop. So every time, so when there are 2, 0, 1, then the value at count pointer will be 2, and then that's going to be the number. Assume the user, you're going to also need to make the main function with the function call. So we're going to do that over here. Int main. All right, the array should be size 100. And then we're going to have to declare a count. At the beginning, we don't have anything in our array. We could initialize it to 0 here, but we make sure that it's 0 when we set it here. So, but you could set it to 0 because we haven't put anything in there yet. Then you call the function fill array, and you pass it the array and the address of count. And then we have return 0 for our main function. And that is the answer to question number 2. There's also a sample solution. All right, let's take a look at question 3. This is 2 function definitions and the main function with 2 function calls. All right, so first we're going to do the 2 functions. So the first function definition is called fill doubles. So we're going to start with function 1. The name of the function is called fill doubles. It takes an array of doubles and returns an integer. So the return type will be integer. It takes an array of doubles, not an array of integers. That's its only parameter. Inside the function, declare, ask, and get how many doubles they want to add to the array up to 100. This will be the count. Fill the array with doubles and return that count. Assume the user will add a number between 1 and 100. So you don't need to enforce it. You can assume that the user will give you a number between 1 and 100. So we're going to declare our count. We're going to ask for the count. We're going to scan in the count. Okay, so now we have the count. And then we're going to fill the array with doubles one by one. So I'm going to add an integer I up here for my for loop. For I equals 0, I less than count, I plus plus. We're going to fill the array. So we're going to printf, enter. This is for each element in the array. We're going to scanf %lf into address of the array at index I. So this is going to fill in each item in the array up to count. So if there's 10, it's going to go from 0 to 9, and then count will be 10. And then we need to return the count. And the count is an integer. So it's going to match the return type of our function, which is an integer, and that is function number 1. Now let's take a look at function number 2. The function is called fix grades. Okay, the name of this function is fix grades. It takes an array of doubles and the number of grades in the array. So we're going to pass it a double array and an int for the count. The function has a void, oh that's a typo, a void return type. The function will ask the user for a bonus amount and add that bonus to all the grades in the array. So we're going to need an I because we're going to go through the loop. We're going to need a double for the bonus. We're going to ask for the bonus amount. And we're going to scan in the bonus amount. And then we're going to go with our loop and add the bonus amount to each element in our array. Okay, those are our two functions, and now we just need to remember to do the main function with the two function calls. So we're going to do that on the next slide. We have our main function. So in our main function, we need to declare a double array to be of size 100. We have an integer count. And so let's see. So we're going to call our fill doubles array first to put some doubles into our array. We'll pass it the array, and then it's going to return back the count. And then we're going to call our fix grades function, which we're going to take an array of doubles and the count, and it has a void return type. And so we're going to return 0. and that is our main function. All right, so that's question 3. And again, there are sample solutions posted, so this is just going through kind of strategy to answer these questions, and you can rewind this video and go back and look at it again. All right, next question, write only the function definition. All right, the name of the function is called score calc. It has 2 parameters, an array of doubles called scores, and an int that contains the number of elements. So we have an int count. The function should compute the following and print it onto the screen: the sum of the scores, the average of the scores, and the number of times there is a score above 75. The function will return the number of times there is a score above 75. So the function is going to return a count. So we're going to have an integer return type. So we're going to have to declare a variable for that. So we'll call this the 75 count. And actually, to make it easier, I'm just going to call this 75, and I'm going to initialize it to 0 because we haven't counted any yet. We also need a double for the sum, which will have to be initialized to 0. And we also need a double for the average. So now we're also going to need an integer I for our loop. So this is the same thing. That's why I gave you these sample questions to practice, practice, practice. For I equals 0, I less than count. Count is the number of filled cells. I plus plus. But we have to do a couple of things here. The first thing we're going to say sum equals sum plus scores of I. So it's going to add up. That's just going to add up all the elements in the array. Then we're going to check if scores of I is greater than 75. Then we're going to add 1 to our 75 count. So we're going to say 75 plus plus. So that's going to update this count if we have scores that are greater than 75. Then what do we need to do? We need to calculate the sum, calculate the average. So after we go all the way through the whole loop, we need to calculate the average. So then the average equals the sum divided by the count, right? So that's how many are in there. So count is an integer, but sum is a double. So therefore it will do double math and store the result in the average. Then after we do that, you want to print onto the screen. So we're going to, I'm out of space. So if this were to happen on your test, you can put a little arrow here that says printf. You need to print the sum, so that's %f. You need to print the average, that's %f. And you need to print the count, that's %d. So that's the sum. I'm not writing that very well. The sum, the average, and the 75 count. So that's enough for your printf. You could obviously make it nicer, but if you're handwriting, that's all it asks. It doesn't matter if you have \n or anything like that, but be sure that you calculate the average and you print these things after the loop. So this is the for loop, so you want to make sure you finish the for loop before you print all of that stuff. And then you need to return the number of times, so you're going to return 75. And then you have your ending curly brace for your function. So if you're on your test and you're handwriting your answers and you happen to run out of space and you just do a little arrow like that, that's perfectly fine. Try to write as neat as you can. Obviously, it's difficult to read if the writing is really messy. All right, question 5, write only the function definition again. So write the function. The name of the function is called getAges. The function repeatedly prompts the user for positive integers until they enter a negative value to stop. The function will return the average of all those that are entered and print the oldest one onto the screen. The number 0 can be counted as an age. All right, so number 0 is a positive. So basically, you're going to repeatedly get ages from the user until you get a negative value. You're going to return the average. So average is usually measured as a double. It doesn't look like it's going to take any parameters. You could use a double input-output parameter. It doesn't say that you can't, but I'm going to do it this way. So now I'm going to declare an age. I'm going to ask for that age. I'm going to scan in that age. And I'm going to continue to get age. I'm going to continue to get ages as long as they don't enter a negative value. So my test is, this is my initialization. So I'm going to say while age is greater than or equal to 0. So if I get a positive value, I'm going to get another age. So I'm going to run out of space here again, but I'm going to have to printf and get another age inside of my while loop. All right, so this is the initialization for my loop, this is the test for my loop, and this is the update. So what am I going to do with these ages when I get them? I'm going to need to calculate and return the average, and I'm going to need to find out the oldest. So only do one thing at a time. So I need to have a sum in order to calculate the average, initialized to 0. I also need to have a count to count how many I've entered in order to calculate the average. And I'm going to also declare an average. So I have an average, a sum, and a count. And then I also need to get the oldest age, but let's deal with the sum first. So you get the age, so the sum equals sum plus age. So I'm going to add up the age, add up the sum of all of the ages, and of course then I need to keep count, so I'm going to say count plus plus. Now I need to get the oldest age. So in order to get the oldest age, I'm going to declare another variable called old, and I can initialize that one to 0. And then when I get an age, I can say if the age is greater than old. So the first one obviously is going to be, well, unless it's a 0, but if the age is greater than old, then that means that old equals the age. So each time I get an age, so you can check it out like this. I have old is 0 and age I haven't entered. So the user enters an age, say they enter a 10. They enter a 10. I test, is 10 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. We can also do my sum over here. So sum started out at 0. Now sum is going to be 10 and count is going to be 1. And now I'm going to check is 10 greater than 0? Yes, it is. So now this is going to change to a 10. Now I get a new age. This time they enter, oops, that's a %D. This time they enter 50. So I'm going to come here. 50 is greater than 0. Yes, it is. I'm going to add 50 plus 10. So now my new sum is going to become 60. My count is going to become right here, 2. I'm going to check, is 50 greater than, oh, I forgot to put age here, 50. Is 50 greater than 10? Yes, it is. So now old is going to change to 50. So it's going to keep doing this until the user enters a negative number. Eventually the user is going to enter a negative number, which will stop this loop. When this loop stops, you need to, the function should calculate and return the average and print the oldest age onto the screen. So you can't return before you, so you don't return the average first. First, after you finish the loop, this is the end of the loop, you're going to print the oldest. So you're going to print old, and then you're going to calculate the average, which would be average equals sum divided by count, and then you're going to return the average. And then you're going to have your ending curly brace. All right, so here the print old part, obviously you need to use a printf for that. I ran out of space, but I'm sure that take a look at the sample solution, and in the sample solution I printed everything that needed to be printed. All right, let's go